It's my belief that to the degree you want to eat, you will work. Here's what I
Mm,
mean. To the degree you want to eat, you will work. I'm
mhm,
working with somebody and their whole business is built on whether they go out and do something right,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And she was really kind of like, "Hey, I don't know what to do next." And I says, "Well, here's really it in a nutshell. To the degree you want to eat, you
mhm,
will go out there and do the work."
mhm,
So stopping was not an option
mhm,
because and now we had to work out how to build the business and we had to break some things apart. She had big programs, nobody was picking them. And it was really interesting what you were saying
mhm,
earlier about the leadership space that
mhm.
you initially came in from. And then you says, well, a lot of leaders have other problems other than getting
That are
better
more pressing,
themselves.
right?
And that right, but yet all the indicators show that the leadership space and training in it and selling to it
Mhm.
is all the way up. But
Yep.
that perspective you just laid on me really makes me ask a question of to the degree you want to eat, you will work.
Mhm, mhm,
Because it comes up to, is my ladder up against the right wall? Because I could do really, really well at putting a ladder up against the walls. Yeah, hustle move, it's just right, it's perfect. I got the little
mhm.
bricks under the bottom, and then you get up
Climbed
there and
up it
go,
real fast.
hey, this is the wrong wall.
Right,
I thought it
right.
was the right wall. So let's talk a little bit about how does one adjust
I
when
think oh, go ahead.
they look at it and they go, I'm not sure if this is the right space.
Yeah, the thing that you said, first thing that I wanna do is because I think that that is exactly the problem that so many people run into. I've run into it, we were just talking about off camera, how I've run into it a number of times in my entrepreneurial career. I think the first thing is we have to dispel that limiting belief that says, to the extent that you wanna eat, you will work.
Mhm.
Because what it does, it tells people that if you're not eating, you're not working hard enough.
Right. And that's why I say I'm challenging it personally.
Right.
And I'm
Right. And
going,
I think that
I
and
think that
here's the
works,
thing,
but
right. And because here's the thing that we have to realize. Because and these are one of those types of things. It's like sometimes that's true. But what do you do when it's not?
mm,
Right.
sometimes that's true. What do you do when it's not?
Right. Because a lot of times it's we're just not working hard enough. But then there's another set, right? Because there's a subset of people. You get the generalizations for the general population. It's like, yes, most of the times if you just work harder, you'll get better results. But then you get the group who is working and who is achieving, right? And this is a group that I found myself part of a lot. Externally, everybody is like, "Why are you disappointed? I would love to have what you have. What you're doing is amazing. What you're doing
Yeah.
is awesome. What you're doing, right?" And so, and you have the best work ethic, or people are always amazed at how much you have accomplished, how much you are getting done. So it's not a question of are you working hard enough. There's a level where how hard you work can never get you what you want.
Mhm.
And I think that, using your analogy, the one that I love that you do so much, right? How in business there are hunters, and then there
Farmers.
are trappers, and then there
Yeah.
are farmers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And one of the things about it doesn't matter how much you hunt or fish, you can never generate as much food hunting and fishing as a farmer can.
There it is.
Because a farmer gets 1,000% yields from what they do, so that if you were hunting and doing amazing every day, you would still only have 365% of what a day is in a year. Whereas a farmer is going to get 1,000% of what could grow in a day in a
Yeah.
year doing what they do. And so when you face that reality that how hard you work doesn't matter after a certain point, right? It's the in economics we call it the principle of diminishing returns, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Diminishing marginal utility, that there comes a point where putting in more hours does not return back to you the same amount as putting in the hours that before it. When you get there, and your dream is bigger than that, then the question that you have to ask yourself is not, are you working hard enough to eat what you want, but are you working smart enough to eat what you want?
Yeah, I put out this post. Y'all can't see it. Oh, you can't see it. So I put out this post yesterday. I hustled this from I think one of my emails. I think it was Jason Flaling. It
Mm-hmm.
says, this is what it says, everybody. Until I can outsmart you, I will outwork you. That's in red. Then it says,
Mm-hmm.
hard work should only be a short-term solution.
That
It
part.
doesn't scale well.
That part.
Now, I struggle personally with this because
Oh
I'm
yeah.
every day that I wake up, I ask, bro, did you put it in? Did you put the hours in? Did you, right? And the other day I got up and I decided that I was going to work all day. Just I'm
Mm-hmm.
working all day. Well, let me tell you how the day went. I literally said I'm gonna work all day. I made
Mm-hmm.
more money not working all day. Okay, this is what happened. This is 100%. I can show you all the receipts.
Mm-hmm.
Is I says, okay, I'm gonna work all day. Well, I got up that morning and I felt like, you know what? I'm gonna go to the coffee shop. So I walked up to the coffee shop. I sat out front. Now, keep in mind, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna work
Mm-hmm.
9 a.m. to midnight. Bro, I made money literally sitting at the coffee shop because people were walking by or somebody saw a book that I was reading, came out, hey, what's that book? So I met a guy from Pennsylvania, and so we started talking, and he was like, "Oh, I really need your help." And the guy really made me an offer by saying, "Ah, gosh, can you tell me about these things you do, these microsites? What is that, right?" So he says, "Because I really need help, but I only have up to $15,000 to spend." Right? That's like telling a person your budget. That's why I don't tell people my budget. There is no budget because they'll spend your budget. So I go and he says, I got to be able to get it done within that range. Now, I says, I make it one better. I says, I says, a portion of that, and then what is returned. I says, let's take a third of that, see how it works, see if we like each other, working together. If it goes well, then let's uncap that. And then we do pay for performance kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll see what I did? Saw where his threshold was, but then I made a different offer, one that uncaps the
Mm-hmm.
possibility. Now, I sat out there for 4 hours drinking coffee, reading my book, and people were walking by that I knew that wanted to stop and get some consulting. I happened to see somebody who I had taught once, and I said, "Hey, where's your husband?" He's at home. I said, "You tell him to come on up here and sit with me." So now it became coffee and consulting. You
Mm-hmm.
buy the coffee, I bring the consulting, right? And was able to get him on a program, a something, right? Saw somebody else that was getting ready to go into one of the competitors down the street. I saw her text her and says, "Hey, are you getting ready to go into this shop?" She says, "How did you know?" I says, "Well, I'm sitting down here." So my point, y'all, is I planned on working all day
Mm-hmm.
and doing it in a specific way. I literally planned on working at my computer and bringing all this stuff in and doing all these different things and all that. But yet, by not working, I ended up earning still.
Yep. And most likely earning more than what the working that you were doing was going to earn you.
Yes, because the
And
other stuff
and
was work. It's
right,
like,
right. And like I got you. Like I've done. We've talked about it, right? I was a company commander, and I was running like a smaller business, and I've made more in a year working 5 days a month than I made doing 80 hours of work with those two businesses, those two things combined. So it's not a question of can I work harder? I know I can work hard. I've done it before. And that reality is what kind of haunts us. And So to your point, how do people get when they get to that point? How do they deal with that? What do they do? I was talking to my coach. She gave me this question to think about for me, because this is again something that I struggle with. So on Strength Finders, my number one strength is achiever. So I am a check the box, count the score. I need to be making something happen, getting something done. So hard work for me is like, sure, when it's got this result attached to it. What happens to me is when it doesn't have this result attached to it, then it becomes this thing where it's like, I'm working hard, but this one of these things is not like the other, right? One of these things is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
She asked me this question. She said, what are the things that I will do that if I see the patterns, I will know I'm being successful? Right. And that to that question of how do you know when your ladder is up against the wrong wall, or what do you do if you figure out your ladder is up against the wrong? First thing that you have to do is you have to be able to define what does success look like. And I know for me, you get to a certain space, like hunting and farming are very different. The things that would inspire you to keep going when you're hunting, right? If you're hunting, you're tracking, you might see some leaves broken, you might see some hoof prints, you might see whatever it is, you might get the scent, you might see the hair snagged and something, whatever it is that you're doing, you have these things that you know that tell you there's a payday coming real soon.
Yeah.
In farming, the indicators are very different.
Sure. Yeah.
In farming, you put the seed into the ground, you know exactly where it is, but you see nothing.
Right. It's almost like delayed gratification, which is what I'm good at. I'm able to delay gratification.
More than just delayed gratification, because even in hunting, you got delayed gratification, but you have indicators of progress. In farming, what you have is both delayed gratification, and if you are not already aware, you have no idea whether you're progressing. Farming is much more faith when you're new to it than anything else, because you literally go a couple of days to a week before you see any sprouts, anything poking through the ground. And depending on what plant it is that you have planted, it could be a couple of weeks before you see, or even a month before you see anything sprout up through the ground. And then once you see the very beginning sproutlings, again, there's nothing. Right. And here's the funny thing about farming: what initially pops up doesn't look like what it is that you're actually going for. Like my wife does a garden. We got, tomatoes, squash, cucumbers, zucchini, all that type of stuff. Right. The funniest thing about it is when you get a tomato plant, or you get a squash plant, or you get a zucchini plant, or whatever, what you see is a whole bunch of leaves, green leaves and green shoots and all the rest of the type
I
stuff.
hope something comes off of that.
Exactly. Don't look nothing like tomatoes, zucchinis, right? Squash, none of that. Then what you see is a whole bunch of flowers. Again, don't look nothing like what it is you're looking for. It's not until months later that you start to see the buds of the fruit that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then they're like this big.
Yeah.
You're like, how is it going to turn into a tomato?
All these points that you could have eaten. You could have ate the flowers. Heck, you could have ate the seeds.
Right.
We've talked a little bit about this before. Yeah. It's coming back around, everybody, because there's always these moments in the entrepreneur's life, inflection moments, right? Where, and it happens to me a lot too, where I go, this could be a grind and a struggle sometimes. It's easier just to go and get that paycheck on Fridays. But then you're reminded that then I gotta worry, I gotta sit in that meeting. I gotta sit there and see the problem and then ask everybody in the room, do y'all see this snake in the room? I mean, do we really have to form a committee for that? And then you decide, you know what, my freedom
is not worth it.
Right. And so this is interesting too, because I've been getting a lot of questions. I've been seeing it a lot, right? And let me bring this back. I can tell you somebody who the business they're in, they can tell when there's a slowdown. And I was listening to her at a mentor meeting once, and she says, Randy, the economy is slowing down. I was like, what are you talking about? Everything's jumping, right? She says, She says, in the space she's in, and she's in the hair and nail space.
Mm-hmm.
She says, people aren't getting their hair done as much. People aren't getting their nails done as much. So she notices it first.
Mm-hmm.
She says
Canary in the
that's
coal.
discretionary income. People are tightening the belt. What is the first thing they get rid of? They go, well, I could just put my hair in a bun. I could throw on some wigs, whatever. So it was an indicator. So in business, the business we're in, when we see the slowdown, we start thinking about, man, I got to feed my family. I might have to go get a job, or I may have to go, do something that kind of keeps me in the game. And there's no harm, no foul. We're not the people that says hardcore entrepreneur for life, entrepreneurs. No, we're saying do what you got to do. What I do oftentimes is I ask a person some very hard and personal questions first. I just got this question yesterday. A what should I do question. Now I'm very cautious not to just give advice, right? Because this was life moment. So I said to them, I'm not going to say who it is. I said to them, first, ask yourself a very hard question. Am I spending the same amount I would spend over here? Because they were deciding if they're going to keep their office, keep their little building or not. I says, ask yourself a question. Then I put some scenarios. I said, scenario one, I says, you are spending $100 or more for cabling, cable TV, and all that kind of stuff. Hard question you got to ask yourself. So $100, and I just put some scenarios. I says, you have other subscriptions that are pulling away X amount a month, right? I says, you took 2 trips last year that cost $2,000, $1,000 each, right? So now we're up at 2,000. We're up at $100. So you see $100 a month. And then I says, now ask yourself that question. I've done it personally too. If that amount equals what the cost of your building is, cut those out. I says, cut them. I said, because if it is the building that is the place whereby you earn your living or your business could generate revenue. And then I says, every activity that's not a revenue generating activity, because we know if you got all the cable, you're going to want to sit around and watch TV. Right now, that's getting us back into the narrative of to the degree you want to eat work. But it's also saying now, ask yourself, what's your burn rate?
Yeah.
Reduce that to 0 and then go into it with a different
I want to
mindset.
jump in and ask you this question, though, because I think that there's a tension in this conversation, which is, how do I know if the problem is I'm not working hard enough or if the problem is I'm not working smart enough?
Well, here it is. And I'm going to bank off of something I heard a dude talking about it's something I suspected, but I wasn't intelligent enough in this space to articulate it like he did. And when he says, okay, he said they were just busting their heads running ads to get business. Right? Their whole business is they run ads. They as a result of the ads, they get business. And he says he started noticing that he was running a lot of ads, but the business wasn't getting better. Right? Now, how do you notice? What's in the bank from the efforts. Okay. Now, so this is what he did. He says he went on this journey to understand whether Google, get this, y'all, whether Google and in Facebook too was basically, how should I put this lightly? He says Google was basically robbing him as he spent more money. And he did these series of tests. Now, this is the nerd that I was saying. He articulating what I have a feeling about, right? Because people used to say, well, when you do your programs, when you design your stuff, make sure you track everything. Get this. He says, don't track nothing. He said, this is why. He said, the moment you track it, then they're tracking it because, they're basically riding on your whatever, and they're tracking it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then he says he did these series of tests. I mean, this guy is a nerd, and I've been following him, but he's so up here, and I'm like, I feel like I'm not smart enough to be having this conversation or even listening. But I kept listening, and it's starting to make sense now. So he says he started running. So the more he put in, the more he tracked, the more they noticed when he made money, and the more they raised his cost. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, wait a minute, I'm working my butt off. I'm putting all this work in. I'm doing hitting the right buttons. And yet my business isn't getting better because my costs are going up as a result of that hard work. So now y'all seeing the analogy here. The cost of doing more versus smart could be costing you on the back end. This is my point. And then he was
Mm-hmm.
doing it in a statistical way. So he says he stopped, he started doing it a different way. He stopped letting them kind of, he found that they were just crushing him with those costs as he made more money. So when he didn't track it, he says it's almost like they were saying, hey, where'd this guy go? He was a good advertiser. Let's give him free stuff. He says he started earning more money by not working as hard as he was to do this tracking and all that kind of stuff. He says
Mm-hmm.
the only way he determines if he's making money now is when he runs an ad, does money go in the bank above what the costs are. That's it. His ROI. So he simplified it to a degree. And he says
Mm-hmm.
he's noticing now Google is, and he was upset by this because he's been one of their top, runners of
Mm-hmm.
ads.
Advertisers, right?
And he says they're gorging me. And this is like the second person, one of his partners too, has said the same thing. And
Yeah.
he says they were hitting them for a lot.
But again, so let me say it this way. I think, first of all, that point is a very important point for everybody to understand. There comes a time when you have to work smarter. But I want to push back just a little bit to say, yes, if he's doing $1 million a month in ads, then he's already past the problem of, I know how hard I need to work. And he's dealing with the problem of, I'm working harder, but it's not fixing anything. What I'm really, and I don't want to push you on this. I got an idea, but I don't think I don't know whether I've got it or not. What I want to push you on is to get you, like, when somebody is in that space where they feel like they're working hard, but they're not sure if they're working hard enough. How do they know?
There's always indicators. You in one of your books, you talked about knowing where your goalpost is and stop moving it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you can get a touchdown. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was so poignant when I read that. And I'm probably messing up the actual way you said it. But
Is it?
you says here's a way to tell whether you're winning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And another thing, and I'm going to bring this in, is we have to change our indicators.
That part.
We have to change what we see as the win. And this is something that I couldn't, because I'm the monetize your life guy. So I says, well, if there ain't no money in the bank, then you ain't winning, right? You didn't win today. But yet,
Right.
when you say, well, I know these actions work,
Mm-hmm.
the new indicator is, did I do the action? And I've been doing a lot of that in my coaching. Literally,
Yeah.
Rob, I've been doing a lot. I says, okay, because I've been seeing a lot of bad business models,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going, that's going to be hard. So I've been, instead of telling the person, that's a terrible business model, because it'll break their frame,
Right.
right? And they've worked hard to build a bad business model. So what I'm suggesting is, I says, okay, let's break apart the business model and let's find the components that did work. And if you
Mm-hmm.
put that same yeoman and yo womanship in that, it
Mm-hmm.
will succeed.
And I think,
I got a
go ahead.
text today. I
Mm-hmm.
got a text today, and I got to share that with you, with everybody. Here's the text. And if you're listening to this, you'll know who obviously who you are who said this. And this is an indicator of how sometimes you just have to break things out. And I'm going to put it like, okay, here it is. Because I talk a lot about setting money traps, right? Buy buttons, all these different things. And this is what she said. The traps are set, starting to snap. 2 traps produce revenue this week. And there's some stuff that we have been talking about. I says, follow up,
Mhm.
do this, do that, right down to the bone. Just heard another snap for next week. Your strategy really does work. Thank you.
Yep.
Now that's a
And I think
receipt for
that
y'all.
point that you're making, I think the key thing, if you all take anything away from this discussion, know this. All right. When we were talking about the difference between hunting and farming, is that it has different indicators.
Different
And
indicators.
the indicators that would be in hunting, which say, yep, I'm still tracking the same thing. Yep, I'm still tracking the same thing. Yep, I'm still tracking the same thing. That's what we've gotten conditioned to. In
Right.
farming, your indicators, you have to know the whole cycle, right? It's not just about delayed gratification, it's about understanding the entire cycle because Jordan Peterson said this once, and he was saying that, joy is actually not in goal setting. It's in knowing that we're making progress towards our goals. That's when we have moments of joy.
Correct.
And when you begin farming, because the indicators are different, it's imperative that you learn what the indicators of success are for
That's
the
right.
type of fruit or the type of crop that you are farming.
Yep.
Because there are different indicators of success for corn than there are for pumpkins, than there are for potatoes, than
Yes.
there are for squash, than there are for green beans, than there are for yams. No, I'm just playing. But
Yeah.
the whole thing about it is we have to understand what the indicators are. And for so long, I didn't know in the business that I was in what the indicators of success were. Because what most people do is they generalize the indicators of success for business. And it really depends on what niche you're in, what transformation you provide,
Yes. Yes.
and what ultimately your definition of success is.
Yeah, and look, listen, I'm gonna tell y'all 100. Yeah, I struggle with it even to this day on certain things. It's usually something new because you're unfamiliar with it,
Mhm.
right? And there's something about the starting. Somebody was saying to me earlier that they have to start over in something. I says, awesome. They're like, what are you talking about? At their age or whatever it is, they said, I got to start over. I says, yes, because there's something about when you're starting something new, you get a uncertainty yet an exhilaration. So there's something about it. I says because it's probably the other stuff is old, it's tired, you're bored, whatever it is, right? I said, but when you're starting something new, there's a new kind of love. There's something that happens like when you fall in love again, you met somebody new, and you're like, oh my gosh, let's talk on the phone for 2 hours. That kind of thing. Versus, man, I'm tired of hearing you. Right. So I said there's something about it changing you because it's new. So
Mhm.
and that becomes again, as you look at this thing that you're doing, the metaphors that Rob just laid out are there. We sometimes have to change what we see as a success. Like for example, when I was starting a new I don't know, YouTube channel or something like that, and it wasn't popping. I was like, man, I'm getting like 2 views. And then I said to myself, yeah, but did you show up the next week? Because what I have found that with this new thing, I've been able to now take all of those videos and repurpose them and put them out there. Remember, breaking it apart, put those out there in a different way and
Mhm.
getting success. So I was
Exactly.
like, wait a minute. So I got 5 views on this video, but that video was a training that I then took the training, put it somewhere else, made money.
Yep. And
That part.
so here's the thing. I think there's two nuggets that you just dropped. The first nugget is you have to be willing to do the thing long enough
Yes.
without results. Just the doing of the thing long enough, right? So if you're going to farming, you have to be willing to farm for 6 months, not knowing what your results are.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to do that, then you're probably not ready for farming. The
Right.
second thing that I would say is, in that I pulled away from that is you also have to make sure that you're aware of whether or not you know what the life cycle of the thing that you're farming looks like. Because if you don't, Even if you do the 6 months, you won't be able to tell what happened because you won't know what stages
Right.
hit and what stages didn't. And that's where
Right.
coaching or getting somebody consulting to come in, they can actually tell you. But here's the very important key. It's not general consulting. It is consulting from somebody who has farmed what you farm.
Yeah.
You getting consulting about how to grow corn from somebody that's only grown green beans, they can give you general stuff. They can't let you know what happened and messed up your corn.
Correct. And that becomes the opportunity, everybody, for stuff that we do. And it's so funny that when I looked at, and I've been doing a lot of this, just looking at people's business models, and I can go, okay, I see the holes there, but let's pull that part out because I think that part can make money. And they can't see it because they're in the throes of, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? They're in the throes of just doing the thing that people said, work hard, blah, blah, blah. And I says, no, I says, that right there could probably make money, but we got to pull it out and give it a separate doorway, right? And I've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about these digital doorways to dollars. Y'all heard me say this before. Digital doorway. I says, now let's create a new doorway for that. And they were like, oh, but I thought I had to build all this. I says, mm-mm. And I've been using the
Mm-hmm.
analogy of a brick. I says, look, the house is going to take too long. So let's sell bricks. They were
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I says, just build one brick. And then we're going to offer it to people and says, hey, do you want a brick like this? And they go, but yeah. Well, I just built one. I'll build you one. And
Mm-hmm.
then you keep building bricks. What typically
Until you got
happens
enough
is
that you can build a house.
until you can look at, but in the meantime, you've eaten. Rob and I have talked
Mm.
about this too. I says, look, Rob, look, you got the book. Let's break the book apart. Let's make it little things that go out there and start, being little salespeople for you that can get you some bricks that you can eat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I was telling a guy this the other day. He wants to build the whole book. I says, we're going to sell one chapter at a time, one
Yep.
brick. He's like, one chapter? I says, yeah, you can even do that on Amazon now. I said, the
Mm-hmm.
point is, especially with AI and the opportunities that it allows us, one thing could be turned into 10 things that can all be out
Mm-hmm.
there selling because you
Exactly.
did the one thing. That's it.
Mm-hmm. There you
Is
go.
that
I
making sense,
think that's the
everybody?
mic drop moment right there.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Hey everybody, we hope that you had a good time today. We're gonna make some other things available to you. If you notice, I just started the YouTube or the Facebook page, and I've been putting some things on there. So I'm gonna give you links to that. And then we are breaking apart some of these lessons and pulling out some essential things that we think that you could benefit from immediately, right? So your brick, we're pulling these episodes out and pulling bricks apart so you can say, oh, that's the brick that I needed. Digestible parts, like we talked about in one of our other videos. Digestible parts. Don't try to build the whole thing all the time. Don't try to eat the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing all the time. Just take this little bit, use
Mm-hmm.
that, and if it works for you, come back and says, that worked. What else you got? And we'll give you the rest. All right,
I
everybody.
like it.
We'll talk to you next time.
Till next time, everybody.